It's not a currency. I mean, it does not meet the test of a currency. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not around in 10 or 20 years. People say, well, I'll sell you goods in Bitcoins, but they change the price of those every time the price of the dollar changes in relation to Bitcoin. They're pricing off the dollar. They could say, well, I'll sell it to you in barrels of oil, but if every time the price of oil changes, they change the number of barrels you have to have. That's not, your oil is not the currency.
I shouldn't answer any questions on the subject, but I will. There's all kinds of people watching this that are long Bitcoin, and there's nobody that's short, and nobody wants their windpipe stepped on. And I don't blame them. I don't like people who step on my windpipe. But I would say this: if the people in this room owned all of the farmland in the United States, and you offered me a 1% interest in it, and you said, for a 1% interest in all the farmland in the United States, pay our group, well, let's see, 10 million, pay us this bargain price, $25 billion. I'll write you a check this afternoon, $25 billion, now I own 1% of the farmland. If you tell me you own 1% of the apartment houses in the United States, and you offer me a 1% interest, so I'll have a 1% interest in all the apartment houses in the country, and you want whatever it may be for it, then call it another $25 billion or something. I'll write you a check. It's very simple. Now, if you told me you owned all of the Bitcoin in the world and you offered it to me for $25, I wouldn't take it, because what would I do with it? I have to sell it back to you one way or another. I mean, maybe I have the same people, but it isn't going to do anything. The apartments are going to produce rental, and the farms are going to produce food. And if I've got all the Bitcoin, I'm back where whatever his name was, who may or may not have existed, was 15 years ago. If I've got it all, he could create a mystery about it. But everybody knows what I'm like. I mean, so if I'm trying to get rid of it, people will say, well, why should I buy some Bitcoin from you? I mean, why don't you call it Buffett coin? Make your own or something. Do something. But I'm not going to give you anything for it. And you'd be right, incidentally. But that explains the difference between productive assets and something that depends on the next guy paying you more than the last guy got. Now, net, if you look at it, a lot of commissions have been paid, and there's all kinds of frictional costs that are very real that somebody has paid to a bunch of people who facilitate this game. But whatever one group of the public has taken out, or one group of owners, has come in from other people. I mean, other people have entered the room and they move money around, but no money there's no more money in the room. It just changed hands with a lot of maybe fraud and costs involved, and a whole bunch of things you lose. You forget the numbers or forget the equation. You can do that with a lot of things. I mean, it's been done throughout history. Certain things have value that don't produce something tangible. I mean, you can say a great painting, probably will have some value 500 years from now. May not, but the odds are pretty good that if it was a big enough name, at some point, there will be a few things. You can find something. If somebody wants to sell you a pyramid or something, and you can charge the viewers, or it'll be around a long time and won't produce anything. But people will find it interesting to go there because I've read about the pyramids. But basically, assets, to have value, they have to deliver something to somebody, and there's only one currency that's acceptable in the United States. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of things, We can put up Berkshire coins, or we can put up Berkshire money or anything like that. But we get in trouble, I guess, if we call it money. But in the end, this is money, and there's no reason in the world why the United States government, whose currency people prefer, there's just under 2.3 trillion just of these little pieces of paper floating around some places, 7,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. And of course, most of them probably aren't in the United States. Who knows? But this is the only thing that's money. And anybody that thinks the United States is going to change the way they let Berkshire money replace theirs, is out of their mind. I mean, so anyway, with those few deficiencies, you can, whether it goes up or down in the next year or 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. But the one thing I'm pretty sure of is that it doesn't multiply, it doesn't produce anything. It's got a magic to it, and people have attached magics to lots of things. I mean, the gold in Wall Street, create magic. We are not an insurance company; we're a tech company. Well, they're an insurance company, but a dozen people or so have raised a lot of money. They just say, just don't pay any attention to the fact that we sell insurance. We are a tech company. Well, in the end, they wrote insurance, and overwhelmingly, they've lost a lot of money since then. You can make up things that work well and getting money from other people, and that's why.
Curious of your thoughts on that.
Stay away from it.
Stay away from Bitcoin.
Well, it's a mirage, basically. I mean, it's a method of transmitting money. And it's a very effective way of transmitting money, and you can do it anonymously and all that. A check is a way of transmitting money, too. Our checks are worth a whole lot of money just because they can transmit money. Our money orders, you can transmit money by money orders. People do it. I hope Bitcoin becomes a better way of doing it, but you can replicate it a bunch of different ways, and it will be. And the idea that it has some huge intrinsic value is just a joke, in my view.
Checks are actually you're drawing upon something. It's not the...
You're transmitting money.
It's up its value.
Yeah, it's dollars on both ends. I mean, from the guy that puts it in.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very fast money order, anonymously.
Bitcoin, this digital currency that's out there that people say, oh, it might be the next big thing. What do you think?
I think it's rat poison. Put him down as undecided.
2 years ago, Fox Business asked you about Bitcoin when it was very, very much in its incipient stages, and you called it rat poison.
Yes.
Do you still feel that way?
I was holding back a little.
Even with the fact that more Bitcoin companies have come up, you still are not a believer?
That's correct. I think maybe the government should keep issuing the currency.
Do you think that it should be regulated?
I wish it would go away.
Well, this is a sort of boxers and briefs.
That's your definition of regulated. Right? I'm with you.
Regulation by Charlie Munger.
Yeah.
Just go away.
Yeah.
If a gun were held to your head and you had to invest in either BlackBerry right now or Bitcoin, which one?
I'd probably short them both.
Charlie?
Well, they asked a similar question of Samuel Johnson once, and he says, it's hard to determine an order of precedency between a louse and a flea.
Well, Bitcoin is mostly about anonymous transactions, and I don't think over time that's a good way to go. That is, I'm a huge believer in digital currency, and in fact, the Gates Foundation is very involved in trying to get that going in poor countries so we can have cheap financial services even for people without much money. But doing it on an anonymous basis, I think that leads to some abuses. So I'm not involved in Bitcoin.
When people say, okay, so you're not involved at all, you're not investing in any Bitcoin things. Okay, no. When people say, oh, the US dollar's going away eventually, what do you say about that, Charlie?
Well, eventually everything goes away. The earth blows up, the solar system disappears. So eventually, On any time scale that's of interest to me, I want more U.S. dollars, not less.
Are you a believer in a stronger U.S. dollar?
Well, not necessarily stronger, but I believe that the U.S. dollar will be the world's reserve currency for a long, long, long time. When you're just looking at the price of something, you're not investing. I mean, if you buy something, Bitcoin, for example, or some cryptocurrency, you're not looking to the asset itself to produce anything. If you buy an apartment house, you're looking at how the apartment house does. If you buy a farm, you're looking at the farm does. If you buy a whole business, you're looking at how the business does. If you buy a part of a business, why shouldn't you look at how the business is going to do? But people get charmed by lots of action and the fact that things are liquid and all of that. And it does have repercussions back into the market when you get something like, an ETN arrangement on the, supercharged on the VIX. I mean, where you can lose 90% of your money in one day. I mean, that really doesn't belong with the word investment. I mean, it's a gambling. In terms of cryptocurrencies, generally, I can say almost with certainty that they will come to a bad ending. Now, when it happens or how or anything else, I don't know. But I know this: if I could buy long-term puts, if I could buy a 5-year put on every one of the cryptocurrencies, I'd be glad to do it, but I would never short a dime's worth.
Have you thought about trading the futures to take a negative position on Bitcoin?
No.
You would not do that?
No. There's no reason. I get into enough trouble with things I think I know something about. Why in the world should I take a long or short position in something I don't know anything about? So, we don't have to know what cocoa beans are going to do or cryptocurrencies. We just have to focus on 8 or 10 stocks that businesses, basically, that we think are decent businesses. But I do think that I think what's going on definitely will come to a bad ending. I mean, you've got virtually everybody. I have a class. I have 11 schools coming on Friday. The questions will be on Bitcoin, and I won't know the answers.
Although when we sat down, Warren, you did say, I should have announced that we were getting involved in Bitcoin this morning.
Well, that is true. I mean, that would be much more interesting to the audience that we were going to issue a whole series of cryptocurrencies tomorrow. But we aren't, believe me. And we don't own any. We're not short any. We'll never have a position in them.
About 5 years ago, we asked Charlie Munger, we were sitting right there, what he thought of Bitcoin, and he said, rat poison. Yeah. Back then, it was about $100+ per Bitcoin. Today, it's 9,000. Is it still rat poison?
Well, probably rat poison squared.
Bitcoin. You and Charlie have told Fox Business and made news calling it rat poison squared. Has anything changed to make you take a second look?
It will come to a bad ending.
Still.
Capitalization of cryptocurrencies approached that of Berkshire and Apple last year. And clearly, the idea behind crypto will affect conventional banking groups where Berkshire is a shareholder. You always say you didn't go into too much detail to obtain an understanding on cryptocurrencies. So what factors caused you to say that it's a bubble?
Well, generally non-productive assets remain, if you had bought gold at the time of Christ and you figure the compound rate on it, it may be a couple tenths of 1%. It essentially is not going to deliver anything other than supposed scarcity, because you can only mine so many. But so what? I mean, what does it produce itself? The check is a wonderful idea. Just imagine how the world would be without being able to write checks or have wire transfer of funds. But it doesn't make the check intrinsically itself worth a lot of money. And if you said you can't use something called check with a little piece of paper, you'd do something else to transfer money. I think that anytime you buy a non-productive asset, you are counting on somebody else later on to buy a non-productive asset because they think they can sell it to somebody for more money. And it's been tried with tulips, and it's been tried with various things over time, and it does come to a bad ending. I mean, you have a hard time. You can think of raw land. I mean, the Louisiana Purchase was, say, $15 million for 800,000 or so square miles. land. In fact, you're sitting on land that came with the Louisiana Purchase, and so what we paid $20 a square mile, and 640 acres in a square mile, and you're down to 3 cents or something. So that was a pretty good purchase of what was then a non-productive property. But it depends. But it's very hard. You can buy stamps. Bill Gross got collected a wonderful stamp collection, and it sold for more money in the end. But it's dependent on somebody else wanting to buy, hoping they will sell it for more money, and so on. And in the end, you make your money out of productive assets. If you buy a farm, you try to estimate what the crops, what amount per acre of soybeans or corn or whatever may be raised, and how much you have to pay the farmer that farms it for you, and what your taxes will be, and various things. And you make a conclusion based on what the asset itself will produce over time. And that's an investment. When you buy something because you're hoping tomorrow morning you're going to wake up, and the price will be higher, the only reason, you need more people coming into it than are leaving. And you can get that, and it will feed on itself for a while, and sometimes for a long while, and sometimes to extraordinary numbers. But in the end, they come to bad endings, and cryptocurrencies will come to bad endings. And along with the fact that there's nothing being produced in the way of value from the asset, that you also have the problem that it draws in a lot of charlatans and that sort of thing who are trying to create various sorts of exchanges or whatever it may be. It's something where people who are of less than stellar character see an opportunity to clip people who are trying to get rich because their neighbor's getting rich buying this stuff that neither one of them understands. It will come to a bad ending. Charlie?
Well, I like cryptocurrencies a lot less than you do. And so, to me, it's just dementia. And I think the people who are professional traders that go into trading cryptocurrencies, it's just disgusting. It's like somebody else is trading turds and you decide I can't be left out.
To the extent that we're being webcast around the world, I hope some of our stuff doesn't translate very well, actually.
He's anything but undecided. This weekend, Vice Chair Charlie Munger likened trading cryptocurrency to, quote, trading turds. The always eloquent Charlie Munger joins us now. Hi, Charlie. Thank you for being here. This is getting a lot of attention, more than it probably deserves, because there are much bigger issues that we deal with here. But, Charlie, did you know there was supposed to be a Bitcoin conference this weekend in Omaha? Had they asked, you could have been the keynote speaker. Would you have said yes?
Well, they were probably crowded out by a group of people that wanted to have a conference on sewage.
Well, you called rat poison 5 years ago, right here in these chairs on Fox Business. You called it rat poison, but that was when it was about $150. Today it's $9,000. It had hit $19,000.
So it's more expensive rat poison.
But there are some people who were able to make some money. And we heard from people who are very passionate about this. And they said, oh, those guys are just trying to protect their old school investments in U.S. dollars. What do you say to that?
Well, I think these idiot booms do harm to a country. They frequently come to bad ends, and they cause economic consequences that are bad for the whole damn country. And so I like it when my country steps hard on idiot booms instead of fanning the flames. And if there's ever anything that needed stepping down on hard, it's Bitcoin.
Warren, what was your gut reaction? You're sitting there on stage, children in the audience, and you guys got the cryptocurrency question, and Charlie came out swinging.
Well, we have an R-rated annual meeting. I mean, it's unlike those. But going back to Bitcoin, net no money has been made from Bitcoin. I mean, in other words, somebody pays somebody else to own the same thing. The Bitcoin has produced nothing, and you have people entering at X and other people exiting at X, and the people that came in at a half X or 5. You can have stocks, and you don't have to do anything with them, and they earn money for you as you go along. It's a whole different phenomenon, and it breeds a lot of chicanery around it. You've already seen some of it.
Sure. You said that Bitcoin, and this was based, you were asked, Charlie said Bitcoin's like rat poison. You were asked about that comment, and you said, well, it's probably more like rat poison squared. Charlie went on in the meeting to then basically call Bitcoin turds.
He is an expressive sort, isn't he? Maybe when he gets a little older, he'll mature.
I just want to ask you about that because it sparks so much controversy, and particularly on Twitter and some of the places where you might expect people who are trading in cryptocurrency to be pretty loud about what they heard. What is it about Bitcoin that gets you guys so fired up?
Well, when you buy a farm, you look at the crop every year and what prices are, and you decide whether it was a satisfactory investment. I mean, you look to the asset itself and what it produces for you. When we buy a business, we look at what the business earns and decide how we feel about it in terms of what we paid. But we are buying something that at the end of the period, we not only have what we bought in the first place, but we have something that the asset produced. And when you buy non-productive assets, all you're counting on is whether the next person is going to pay you more because they're even more excited about another next person coming along. But the asset itself is creating nothing. One of the interesting things, for example, is gold. If you go back to the time of Christ and you look at how many hours of labor you had to give up in order to buy an ounce of gold, and you take it forward to now, you'll find the compound rate maybe 1/10 or 2/10 of 1%. You know, and then you have to insure it during that time and make sure somebody doesn't steal it from you and everything. But it doesn't produce anything. And productive assets, you can pay too much for a productive asset. But I bought a farm in the 1980s, and every year we look at how much it produced the way of soybeans and corn. And at the end of that period, I've still got the farm, and I've gotten some significant income off of it. Apartment house, operating business. But if you and I buy various cryptocurrencies, they're not going to multiply. They're not going to be a bunch of rabbits sitting there in front of us. They're just going to sit there. And I got to hope next time you get more excited after I bought it from you, and then maybe I'll get more excited and buy it from you. And actually, we could sit in the house by ourselves, and we could keep running up the price between the two of us. But at the end of the time, there's one Bitcoin sitting there, and now we got to find somebody else. And they come to an end. I mean, those.
That's a greater fool theory. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, it's buying something because you expect the pool of people who want to buy it because they want to sell it to somebody else will grow, and it's wonderful because it does create a rising price. Does create more buyers, and people think I've got to get in on this, and it's better if they don't understand it. That's the other thing about non-productive. If you don't understand it, you get much more excited than if you understand it. I mean, if you buy a bond that says it's going to pay you 4% a year, you're not going to get any pleasant surprises. It's just going to pay you 4% a year. But if you can have anything you want to imagine, if you just look at something and say that's magic, you can do it with shark's teeth or seashells or anything, and. They did it with tulips in the 17th century in Amsterdam, and they'll do it again. I mean, people, they like to speculate. They like to gamble. And if you can get something, particularly if you have something half plausible going on, if you had bought gold in 1942 and you say, we might lose the war and we might have to run off to some other country, and so let's put our assets in gold, you would have less than a penny for every dollar you got from owning stocks. Less than a penny. Now, somebody calls that a store of value. I mean, I think they're delusionary.
Okay. Andrew has a question, too. Andrew.
Hey, Warren, related to this issue of Bitcoin, you saw that Goldman Sachs just last week announced that they were going to create effectively a trading operation around cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular. you've been an investor in Goldman. What do you think of their decision to do that?
Well, they probably think that lots of people are going to get very excited about it. Well, and maybe already are, but they think there's money to be made trading them. I don't think they're expressing an opinion on the ultimate value. I would be very surprised if the top partners of Goldman are selling their Goldman stock and putting it into Bitcoin. But I want to cover this subject now because my friend Charlie will come on at 8 o'clock and he'll tell you what he will say.
Well, that's my whole entire point. I do want to ask Charlie about it because I think when he talked about the turds, he was referring to this. He said if you're trading this, it's like watching other people trading turds and deciding you want to get a piece of that.
Well, you're not going to get me to comment on that.
Hopefully Charlie's not awake and not watching right now.
Well, the truth is people do trade on very crazy things over time. Imagine people selling their homes to buy a tulip in Amsterdam. If people think they're going to make money the next day, and worse yet, if they think somebody else that they know is going to make money and they aren't going to make money, it just draws people in. I could whisper something on this program, and kind of the more sillier it was, the more it might react, because there's no quantitative limits. If you buy a stock, you say, well, I'll buy it at 15 times earnings, but I won't buy it at 20 times earnings. But when you get into something that doesn't produce anything, there's no checkpoints. There's nothing to reference it to. It's just, it's gone up, so it'll keep going.
Now, I will say, I'll ask this very fleetingly. Has your position changed on Bitcoin?
No, I mean, it's too bad, but Bitcoin, it's ingenious, and blockchain is important, but Bitcoin has no unique value at all. It doesn't produce anything. You can stare at it all day, and no little Bitcoins come out or anything like that. It's a delusion, basically.
So we've gone from rat poison squared to a delusion. Well, kind of an upgrade.
Yeah, I don't. Who knows where we'll be next year? But I'm really sorry it happens, because people get their hopes up that something like that is going to change their lives, and it was a very ingenious thing to figure out how to have a limited supply and make it harder more expensive to create them as you go along, and all that sort of thing. But it doesn't. The function, and this is explained to me by people a lot smarter than I am, but they say blockchain does not depend on, and J.P. Morgan is talking about creating their own, JPM, and it'll be worth $1. I mean, it's matched to the dollar to dollar, and I'm sympathetic to people that own it.
Crypto is a $2 trillion asset class. Are you willing to admit you missed something?
Well, I certainly didn't invest in crypto. I'm proud of the fact I've avoided it. It's like, some venereal disease or something. I just regard it as beneath contempt. Some people think it's modernity, and they welcome a currency that's so useful in extortions and kidnappings and so on and so on, tax evasion. And of course, the envy, everybody has to create his own new currency. And I think that's crazy too. So I'm not having any, I wish it had been banned immediately. And I admire the Chinese for banning it. I think they were right, and we've been wrong to allow it.
Mr. Munger, you've been warning of the evils of cryptocurrency in the past. How do you feel about the Federal Reserve preparing to launch a central bank digital currency? Do you think that this will be beneficial or harmful to the strength and resilience of our markets?
No, the Federal Reserve could have a currency if they want one. That would be just we've got a digital currency already. It's called a bank account. The banks are all integrated with the Federal Reserve System. We already have a digital currency.
All right, let's talk about the broader markets.
For the United States.
So the best investment by far is anything that develops yourself. And again, it's not taxed, so that's what I would do.
I got some advice for you, too. When you have your own retirement account and your friendly advisor suggests you put all the money into Bitcoin, just say no.
He said, did Justin Sun change your mind on cryptocurrencies? For anybody who doesn't know, Justin Sun bought the dinner or the lunch that you just had from the last Glide Foundation fundraiser. He is actively involved in Bitcoin. After that meeting, his PR people put out some notes saying that, you kind of listened to cryptocurrency and maybe you're a little more in tune with the idea of Bitcoin now.
Well, I would say this. When Justin and 4 friends came, they behaved perfectly, and we had a good 3.5-hour dinner, and the whole thing was a very friendly exchange of ideas. But cryptocurrencies basically have no value, and they don't produce anything. So you can look at your little ledger item for the next 20 years, and it says you've got X of this cryptocurrency or that. It doesn't reproduce. It doesn't deliver. It can't mail you a check. It can't do anything. And what you hope is that somebody else comes along and pays you more money for it later on. But then that person's got the problem. But in terms of value, zero.
So it sounds like he did not change your position.
No, but I didn't change his either. And I had a very pleasant dinner, and those people they behaved more than well. And they gave Justin gave $4.6 million to Glide, and that will buy a lot of meals and provide a lot of beds for people in San Francisco. So I thank him.
He gave you some Bitcoin. What's it feel like to be a Bitcoiner?
I don't have any Bitcoin.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
No.
You don't own Bitcoin?
No, I do not own one. I don't own any cryptocurrency. I never will. And in the end, I may start a war on currency. Maybe I can create one, and I'll say there's only going to be 21 million of them, and you can have a little ledger sheet from me and everything that says you have it, and you can have it after I die, but you can't do anything with it except sell it to somebody else. And the interesting thing, of course, is that Bitcoin's been out there a long time, and people talked about how it would be used in various kinds of exchange, but none of our companies are doing business in Bitcoin or anything. Bitcoin has been used, I think, to move around a fair amount of money illegally. So the people
or maybe in countries where you have
the logical move from the introduction of Bitcoin is to go short suitcases, because the money that was taken in suitcases from one country to another, suitcases will probably fall off in demand. I mean, so you can look at that as the economic contribution of Bitcoin to the society